I was standing in my own kitchen, morning sunlight spilling through the same curtains I'd put up 20 years earlier, when my daughter-in-law calmly handed me her terms. Either you start paying rent, Robert, or you'll need to find another place to stay. We can't keep carrying dead weight. Dead weight. That's what Michelle had decided I was. David stood a few steps behind her, eyes locked on his phone, as if it held answers he couldn't find anywhere else. He didn't meet my gaze once. I gave a small smile, not wide, not amused, just the quiet kind that appears when something you've long suspected finally confirms itself. "And what amount were you thinking of?" I asked evenly. Michelle's expression sharpened, almost brightened. She had been bracing for an argument. 2,000 a month, plus utilities. That's actually under market value. Honestly, you'd be getting a bargain. $2,000. For the house Sarah and I purchased back in 1987. The same driveway where David wobbled through his first bike ride. The same home whose mortgage I cleared in 2003. "That sounds fair," I replied softly. "I'll need a few days to sort everything out." "You've got until Friday," Michelle said briskly, already pivoting away as if the matter were settled. Then she added over her shoulder, "And Rob, maybe lower the TV at night. Some of us have real jobs in the morning. I'm 68 years old. I stepped away from my career 5 years ago, not long after Sarah died. Cancer stripped away our plans, our savings, our future, everything but each other. And then it took her too." 6 months after the funeral, David and Michelle insisted I move in. "It's for the best, Dad," David had told me. "The house is too large for one person. You shouldn't be by yourself." I should have recognized it then. That afternoon I placed a single call, just one. "Mr. Pearson." The voice that answered carried warmth and memory. "It's been a long time." "Hello, James. I need to ask you something." "Anything, sir." "You know that. Is the apartment over the garage still open?" There was a brief silence. "The one on the estate?" "Yes. It's yours if you want it. But, are you certain? I was under the impression you preferred staying near your son." "Circumstances shift," I replied. "I'll need to move in by Friday. I'll make the arrangements immediately. Shall I send a car for you?" "No, I'll take care of getting there myself." The next evening, Thursday, David walked in earlier than usual. That alone caught my attention. Working in IT consulting, he rarely left before 7 or 8. It wasn't even 5. "Dad, we should talk." I was in my room folding clothes into a suitcase. It's strange how an entire life can shrink into a handful of boxes once you stop clinging to it. "What's troubling you, son?" He perched on the edge of the bed, twisting his fingers together. "Michelle's been thinking. Maybe we came down too hard on the rent." "Is that so?" "She feels 1,500 might be more reasonable, and you wouldn't have to cover utilities." I placed another folded shirt inside the case. "That's thoughtful of her." "So you'll stay?" I studied him then, truly studied him. When had he grown so diminished? Not in stature. David stood 6'2", just like me, but something in his spirit had folded inward. Perhaps it had been happening for years, and I'd been too close to notice. "No, David, I won't be staying." His expression tightened. "You're serious?" "Dad, where would you even go? You're retired. Your pension can't stretch that far." "What's the plan? Some provincial care home?" "I'll be fine." "You're being impossible. This is absurd. Michelle's trying to compromise, and you're acting stubborn." I closed the zipper on my suitcase. "David," I said quietly, "do you remember your mother's last words to me?" He hesitated. I don't know," she said. "Don't let anyone make you feel small, Robert. Not even family." At the time, I hadn't fully grasped what she meant. Now, I finally did. "That's not fair. We're only trying to help you." "Are you?" I asked calmly. "Because from where I'm standing, it feels more like you're helping yourselves to whatever scraps of my dignity remain." "Come on, Dad. We've let you stay here 6 months. You let me stay in my own house." I replied evenly. "The same house I transferred into your name last year, after you told me you were suffocating under the debt from Michelle's business idea. The house your mother and I bought with honest earnings, every mortgage payment made on time. That house?" David's jaw moved, but no words came out at first. "You said it was a gift." "It was," I answered. "And I'm not asking for it back. I just want you to remember what that gift cost me. Friday morning, precisely at 8, I heard an engine idle outside. Through the window I spotted a black Lincoln Town car, waiting neatly at the curb. James stepped out, dressed as always in a tailored dark suit. Time had been kind to him. We were close in age, yet he'd kept himself lean, composed, polished. In the kitchen, Michelle blended her protein shake. She glanced toward the window and smirked. "Robert, is that your ride to the retirement home?" "Something along those lines," I said. "Well, at least they're punctual." She took a sip. "Make sure you clear everything out. We're turning your room into a gym. I see the plans are already in motion. No sense wasting space." David shuffled downstairs in his pajamas. "Dad, this doesn't have to happen. We can figure something out." "It's already figured out," I told him. James rang the bell. When Michelle opened the door, she gave him the same appraising look she used when deciding whether something held value. "I'm here for Mr. Pearson," James said politely. "He's all set," Michelle replied, already pivoting away. "David, don't forget to measure that room. The equipment gets delivered Monday." James lifted my suitcase, and the 2 small boxes that contained the rest of my belongings. That was all I had left there. Sarah's keepsakes. The ones I couldn't part with but refused to leave as an inconvenience, I'd already placed in storage. He'd never shown much interest in his mother's photography books anyway, or in her grandmother's hand-stitched quilt. "So that's it?" David asked quietly. "You're actually leaving?" "You told me to start paying rent or find another place," I reminded him. "I'm choosing the second option." "But where will you go?" "Dad, you can't afford something on your own. Not with housing prices the way they are." "I'll manage," I said again. Michelle reappeared, leaning casually against the doorway. "Oh, and Rob, we're renovating the basement soon. If you've left anything down there, it'll probably get thrown out." The basement, the place where my old workbench still stood, where I built David's cradle before he was born, where I crafted a dollhouse for his sister Anna before the accident took her from us, where Sarah and I spent quiet Saturday mornings restoring furniture we'd picked up at estate sales, talking about everything and nothing at all. "There's nothing down there I need," I replied. James held the rear door open for me. I settled into the seat, the leather cool against my back. Through the window, I saw David standing on the porch, hands shoved deep into his pockets. Michelle had already disappeared inside. "Where to, Mr. Pearson?" James asked once he was behind the wheel. "Home," I said. "Take me home." We drove north, leaving behind the subdivision where David and Michelle lived. We passed the Tim Hortons, the Canadian Tire, then merged onto the highway leading out of Toronto. James didn't pry. He never had. It was one of the qualities I respected most about him. The drive stretched to about 90 minutes. Gradually the city skyline faded, replaced by open fields and gentle hills. It was late October, and the maple trees were blazing in their final show of color before winter claimed them. Sarah adored this season. She would often make me pull over just so she could capture the leaves glowing against the sky. Eventually we turned off the main road onto a private lane. The gates stood open, as if they'd been expecting me. A wooden sign beside them read Pearson Vineyards Estimators 1995. Not long after I'd moved in with David and Michelle, she once asked what I'd done before retiring. I told her I worked in agriculture. That much was true. Grapes for wine are still crops. What I didn't explain was that Pearson Vineyards spanned 200 acres in some of Ontario's finest wine country, that we bottled 15,000 cases a year, that our Chardonnay and Pinot Noir had taken home international awards. I also never mentioned that the company Sarah and I built from bare soil was now valued at roughly $12 million. There were many things I chose not to mention. The main house appeared at the end of the drive. A restored Victorian farmhouse Sarah had poured 5 years of her life into renovating. Beyond it stood the tasting room addition. All glass panels and clean modern lines catching the morning sun. Past that, endless rows of vines stretched toward the horizon, their branches still heavy with the season's final clusters. James steered toward the apartment above the garage, a converted carriage house we'd completed the year before. Sarah fell ill. She used to call it our retirement cottage, the cozy place we'd move into once maintaining the big house felt like too much. I never had the heart to live there. After she passed, the farmhouse felt alive with her presence. I needed that closeness, needed to be surrounded by the life we'd built side by side. Moving in with David had seemed like a solution to the silence. I eventually realized you can't mend one emptiness by stepping into another. "Welcome home, sir," James said, as he stepped out. I took the liberty of filling the fridge. "Margaret prepared your favorite stew. It's in the freezer." Margaret, Tom's wife, had worked in the tasting room for 15 years. She'd delivered casseroles for months after Sarah's funeral. She stood beside me at the memorial, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, James," I said quietly. "For all of it." He hesitated. "Are you certain about this, Mr. Pearson? Being out here on your own?" "I'm not on my own," I replied. "I'm home." That first week, I didn't reach out to David. Instead, I joined the crew in the vineyard, gathering the last grapes of the harvest. My hands remembered every motion, the careful clipping of each cluster, the heft of the bins once they were filled. Tom clapped me on the back. "Thought the city swallowed you whole." "Just passing through," I said. "How's your boy?" "He's learning," I answered. "One way or another." By the second week, David finally called. I let it ring. He called again the following day, and the day after that. On the fourth attempt, I finally answered. "Dad, where are you? I've been trying to get hold of you for days." "I've been occupied," I replied calmly. "Occupied with what? Are you all right? Are you eating properly?" "I'm doing just fine, David. How's the renovation coming along?" "Forget the renovation. We need to talk. Can I come see you?" "Where are you staying?" "Somewhere secure," I said. "Somewhere within my budget." There was a stretch of silence. "Dad, I've been thinking. Maybe Michelle and I handled the rent thing badly. Maybe we rushed it. Maybe you did. So come home. No rent. We'll sort it out. Just come back." "Why?" I asked quietly. "Why do you want me there?" He didn't answer immediately. I could hear him breathing, searching for something that sounded convincing. "Because you're my father," he said at last. "That's the most honest sentence I've heard from you in months," I told him. "But it isn't enough." And I ended the call. During the third week, Michelle phoned. That alone caught my attention. She'd never once called me directly before. "Robert, hi, it's Michelle. Listen, about the rent situation. I was under a lot of financial pressure. I shouldn't have taken that out on you. I'm sorry." "I appreciate the apology," I said. "So you'll come back?" "No." A beat. "Why not?" "I just said I was sorry." "Michelle, may I ask you something? Do you actually know what I did before I retired?" "You were in agriculture, farming, or something like that?" "Something like that." "Well, anyway," she rushed on, "we'd love for you to move back. David misses you. And honestly, I could use your help." "With what?" "I'm launching a new venture, an online boutique focused on sustainable fashion. I just need some seed money to get it off the ground. Maybe 20 or 30,000. You must have savings tucked away. I'd repay you with interest." I nearly laughed. Almost. "Michelle, I don't believe I'm the right person to fund your venture." "Why not?" "You don't have faith in my idea." "I'm sure your idea has merit," I said evenly. "But I don't mix business with family. That's absurd. The family is supposed to back each other." "I agree," I replied. "They are." And I ended the call. By the fourth week, an envelope arrived from a law office. David and Michelle, it seemed, were worried about my well-being and were considering steps to have my competency evaluated. The letter implied I might not be in a sound mental state to make decisions about where I lived. I contacted my attorney, Patricia Chen. She and I had worked side by side for 2 decades, ever since she helped Sarah and me structure the vineyard properly as a corporation. "They're probing," Patricia said after reading the letter. "Without legitimate cause, they can't compel a competency assessment." "Have you done anything that suggests impaired judgment?" "I moved out of my son's house and declined to bankroll my daughter-in-law's startup." "That sounds entirely rational," she said dryly. "Would you like me to respond?" "Not yet," I told her. "Let's allow them a little more rope." In the 5th week, David appeared at the vineyard. I was in the tasting room with Margaret, going over shipment orders, when I saw his BMW 5 Series glide into the parking lot, barely a year old. I found myself wondering how that fit into his supposed financial struggles. He stepped inside and froze. The tasting room was lively that afternoon. It was Saturday, and a wedding party of 30 was touring the property. Glasses raised, laughter echoing against the walls, framed photographs lined the room, Sarah and me at wine festivals, holding international awards, cutting ribbons at our grand opening. "May I help you?" Margaret asked politely. "I'm here to see Robert Pearson," David said, still scanning the room. "And you are?" "His son." Margaret's smile didn't fade, but something sharpened behind her eyes. "I'll check if he's available." She walked into the small office where I had stepped away the moment I noticed David arrive. "He's here," she said softly. "Should I have him leave?" Margaret asked quietly. "No," I replied. "Let him wait. I'll be out shortly." I kept him there for 15 minutes. Not to make a point, but because the wedding group deserved my attention. They'd paid for the premium tasting, and I wasn't about to shortchange them. Once they were comfortable, sampling their wine flights and laughing over the notes I'd prepared, I stepped back into the main room. David stood in front of a framed photograph from the Lieutenant Governor's Awards for Excellence in Ontario Wines, the year Sarah and I took gold for our Riesling. "Is that Mom?" he asked softly, eyes fixed on the image. "Yes. She looks really happy." She was. He finally turned to me. "What is all this, Dad?" "This is Pearson Vineyards," I said. "Your mother's and mine." "Your vineyard?" "Yes. You actually own this place?" "I do." His gaze swept the room. The polished wood, the custom lighting, the steady rhythm of customers coming and going. "How much is it worth?" "Why is that the important question?" "Dad, you let me believe you had nothing. You let us think you needed help. You decided that on your own." I answered evenly. "I never once asked for charity. But you could have told us." "For what purpose?" I asked. "So you'd treat me differently? So you'd measure my value by property, instead of character?" He had no response. "Your mother and I built this from the ground up," I continued. 25 years of work. We started with a loan that kept us awake at night, terrified we'd lose everything. 18-hour days. Trial and error. More failures than victories. But we stayed the course. "I didn't know," David said quietly. "You never bothered to find out," I replied. "When I retired, you assumed I'd spent my life in some forgettable job. When I moved in with you, you assumed I was living off your kindness. You filled in the blanks without asking a single question, and I let you. Because I needed to see who you were when you thought I had nothing left to give. That's not fair, isn't it?" I held his gaze. "Let me ask you something, David. When was the last time you called me just to talk? Not because you needed money, not because you wanted advice, just because I'm your father? Not because Michelle nudged you, just because you wanted to know how I was holding up?" He started to respond, then stopped. "When was the last time you asked about your mother?" I continued. "What do I miss most? About how the nights feel now that she's gone." His eyes began to glisten. "When was the last time you treated me like a human being instead of a responsibility you were managing?" "Dad," his voice faltered, "I gave you that house," I said steadily. "Do you know why? Not because you were destitute. You and Michelle earn well. The debt you were drowning in came from bad decisions, not misfortune. I signed it over because it was the last place your mother and I shared together, and living there without her was unbearable. I thought maybe you'd value it. Build something meaningful there with your own family. Instead, you tried to charge me rent to stay inside a gift I handed you." "I didn't know it had been yours," he said weakly. "Michelle told me her father helped with the down payment. Her father didn't contribute a cent," I replied. "I cleared your mortgage in full. Look at your closing papers. The funds came from Pearson Holdings LLC. That's me, David. That's this vineyard." He sank into one of the tasting room chairs as if the strength had drained from him. "I don't understand. Why wouldn't you just tell us?" "Because I was grieving," I said quietly. "Because I was lonely. I thought if I moved closer to you, we might find our way back to each other. I hoped you'd want to know me. Not what I could provide, but who I am." "I do want that," he insisted. "I'm here, aren't I?" "You're here because you saw what this place is," I answered. "You're here because you realized I'm not broke. Where were you when you believed I had nothing left to offer?" He dropped his gaze. "David," I said, softening but not retreating. "You're my son. I love you. That will never change. But I don't respect the man you're becoming, and I won't keep pretending that I do." Behind us, the wedding party filtered out, thanking Margaret for the afternoon. Through the wide windows, the vineyard rolled out beneath the October sky, bathed in that warm amber light Sarah used to adore. She always said this was the most beautiful hour of the day, when everything turned to gold. "What do you want from me?" David asked, his voice unsteady. "I want you to go home," I said calmly. "I want you to take a hard look at yourself and decide what kind of man you intend to be. Decide whether you respect the reflection staring back at you. And if after that you still want a relationship with me, then we'll talk. But it will be as equals, David. I am not your ATM, and I am not a burden to manage. I'm your father." "I'm sorry," he whispered. Tears were running freely now. "I really am." "I believe you," I said. "But apologies are easy. Change is harder. I need to see the latter." He left shortly after. I stood by the window and watched his BMW fade down the private road until it disappeared from view. Margaret approached and pressed a glass of our Pinot Noir into my hand. "That couldn't have been easy," she said gently. "No," I admitted. "Do you think he'll come back?" "I honestly don't know," I replied. "Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. And if he doesn't?" I took a slow sip, the 2019 vintage, one of our best. Sarah had been there during that harvest, walking the rows with me, choosing the barrels herself. "Then I keep going," I said. "I make wine. I live my life. I remain who I am." 2 months slipped by. The vineyard eased into winter, the vines bare and resting. We launched the new vintage to strong reviews. I brought on an assistant manager, Sophie. Bright, meticulous, full of energy. She reminded me of Sarah in the way she noticed the smallest details others overlooked. David didn't call. Michelle phoned once, asking if I'd reconsider funding her online boutique. I declined again. She ended the call without a goodbye. In January, I attended the Ontario Wine Awards Gala. Pearson Vineyards walked away with 3 medals. A local newspaper published a feature about the private vintner who quietly built a wine empire. They wrote that I had recently returned from retirement to manage the estate full-time. They were mistaken. I hadn't been retired. I had simply been lost. The next morning, without warning or a phone call, David showed up again. He showed up without warning, standing outside the carriage house, like a man unsure whether he belonged there. He looked different, leaner, worn down, as if the last few months had taken their toll. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside and let him enter. He glanced around the apartment, quietly observing. It wasn't extravagant, but it was warm. Framed photographs of Sarah lined the walls. My books filled the shelves. Through the wide windows, the vineyard stretched out in neat sleeping rows. "Nice place," he said. "It fits," I replied. "Dad, I've been replaying what you said about the kind of man I am." He paused. I didn't like what I saw. He lowered himself into a chair, without waiting to be asked. "Michelle and I separated. I moved out about a month ago." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "Are you?" he asked. "I don't celebrate broken marriages," I answered evenly. He gave a hollow laugh. "It wasn't much of a marriage, more like a business arrangement that stopped benefiting both parties. She wanted access to your money. When she realized that wasn't happening through me, she found another way. She'd been seeing her business partner for 6 months. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. He nodded, then looked down at his hands. "The house." "Yes, I want to give it back." "It's yours, David. I signed it over." "I don't deserve it," he said quietly. "And even if I did, I can't stay there. Every corner reminds me of how I treated you, of Mom, of everything I assumed would always be there." "What are you planning to do?" "I found a small apartment. Nothing impressive. I'm selling the BMW, paying off the real debts, the ones I created. I'm starting from scratch." "That sounds responsible," I said. "I've also started therapy," he added, "trying to untangle some things. My therapist asked me to describe our relationship, and I realized I couldn't, not in any meaningful way. I knew surface details about you, but I never actually knew you." I nodded slowly. "You were still a kid when your mother and I were building the vineyard," I said. "Most of that happened while you were busy growing up." I drew in a slow breath. "We were so consumed building this place," I admitted, "that we probably didn't give you as much of ourselves as we should have. That part, that's on me too." David's jaw tightened. When Anna died, instead of leaning on you and Mom, I pulled away. I blamed you. I blamed both of you for not watching her closely enough. We rarely said her name out loud. Even after 15 years, it carried weight. The accident wasn't your fault, I said gently, and it wasn't ours. It was just something terrible that happened. I know that now, he replied. But I spent 15 years angry. At you. At Mom. At myself most of all. Then she got sick. And I couldn't handle that either. So I worked more. Stayed away more. And after she died, being around you felt like a reminder of everything I'd failed at. David, please, let me finish. He exhaled slowly. When you moved in with us, part of me thought I was making up for lost time, but another part resented you. You had this full life with Mom, with the vineyard, with purpose. I felt like I was drifting. So when Michelle pushed the idea of charging you rent, I let her. It felt good to think for once you needed me, instead of the other way around. I've always needed you, I said quietly. Just not financially. His eyes filled again. I know that now. We sat in silence. Outside, 2 bright red cardinals settled into the maple tree, their color sharp against the snow. Can I ask you something? He said at last. Of course. Why did you give me the house if you knew I didn't deserve it? Because I hoped that something real, something your mother and I built, might remind you of what truly matters. He nodded slowly. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I don't regret you trying. Then he surprised me. I want to work here, he said. At the vineyard. I don't know anything about wine yet, but I can learn. I'm good with systems, organization. Maybe I could help on the business side. Why? I asked carefully. Because I want to be part of something that lasts, something meaningful. I want to understand what you and Mom built, and, he hesitated, voice softer now. I want time with my father, while I still can. I studied him for a long moment. The defensiveness was gone, the entitlement too. What remained was something humbler, more honest. You don't start in the office, I said finally. He blinked. I don't? No. You start in the cold, 6 a.m. harvest checks when the season comes, pruning in winter, cleaning tanks, learning the soil before the spreadsheets. If you want to understand this place, you begin at the roots. A faint, uncertain smile crossed his face. That sounds fair. It's not about fairness, I replied. It's about respect, for the land, for work, for the people who've been here long before you decide to show up. He nodded. Okay. And David? Yes? This isn't redemption in a single season. It's consistent. Day after day. No shortcuts. I understand. I extended my hand. Not as a father granting forgiveness. Not as a benefactor offering opportunity. But as a man offering another man a chance. He took it. But I could also see how fragile he was. How this clarity, still new and untested, could splinter the moment things became uncomfortable. On one condition, I said. Anything. You start at the bottom, vineyard crew. You learn how grapes are grown before you touch a single spreadsheet. You prove this isn't another shortcut. How long? As long as it takes. A season, maybe 2. When Tom says you're ready, then we'll talk. I'll do it, whatever it takes. The work starts at 6. It's cold. It's physical. And the crew won't care that you're my son. I can handle it. We'll see. He stood. Thank you, Dad. Don't thank me yet. Thank you after the pruning season. He gave a small nod and turned toward the door, then paused. I read about the awards, he said. The article said you and Mom started this place with a $50,000 loan and hope. Is that true? Yes. Where did you even get $50,000 back then? Your mother and I sold our car, took out a second mortgage on a condo we could barely afford. Then we worked 3 jobs between us while planting the first vines. It was reckless, terrifying, and the best decision we ever made. You risked everything. We did, because we wanted to build something together, something that would last, something beautiful. Did you? He asked. I looked out across the vineyard, resting beneath its blanket of snow, waiting patiently for spring. Yes, I said. We did. The following Monday, he arrived at 5:45 a.m. Work boots are too clean, jacket too new. determination visible from 50 yards away. Tom put him on pruning duty, under Manuel, a man with decades of experience and absolutely no tolerance for incompetence. From the carriage house window, I watched. David approached his first vine like it might explode. He clipped too high. Manuel shook his head sharply and motioned him back. Demonstrated. Quick, efficient, precise. David tried again. Too low this time. Another correction. Manuel's posture screamed impatience. David didn't argue, didn't roll his eyes, didn't glance toward the house to see if I was watching. He simply adjusted and tried again. The cold was a bit hard that morning. By 8, his fingers were stiff. By 9, his shoulders sagged. Pruning looks gentle, almost artistic, but it demands focus and strength. One wrong cut shapes a vine's entire season. By 10, Manuel stopped correcting every mistake and let him struggle through a row on his own. David moved slower than the others, far slower, but he didn't quit. The next day, he arrived at 5:40. By Friday, his boots weren't clean anymore. His movements were awkward but improving. Manuel still barked instructions, but there was less exasperation in it. At the end of the second week, I overheard something I hadn't expected. Manuel grunted at Tom. He listens. For a vineyard, that's high praise. It would take time. But sometimes growth begins the moment someone decides to stop defending who they were and start building who they could be. Maybe my son would learn what his mother and I learned all those years ago, that the things worth keeping are the things you earn. That family isn't about what you take from one another, but what you build side by side. That respect isn't handed out, it's cultivated. I made coffee and opened my laptop. Orders needed reviewing. Distributors needed calls. The spring release required planning. The vineyard moved forward the way it always had. Through seasons, through loss, through change. Sarah's photo sat on my desk. The one from our first harvest. We were young, exhausted, stained with grape juice, smiling like fools who knew they'd planted something that would outlive them. Even then, she believed we were building something lasting. I picked up my phone and texted David. Remember to hydrate, Manuel will work you hard. 3 dots appeared. I'm already learning that. Thanks, Dad. It wasn't much, just 2 words and a period, but it was real, it was honest, and it was a beginning. Outside, the sun climbed over the frozen vineyard, turning the snow gold and rose. In a few months, the vines would stir awake. Buds would form, leaves would stretch toward the light. The cycle would begin again. That's what vineyards teach you. They teach patience. They teach you that growth can't be rushed, that sometimes you have to cut back hard to allow something stronger to rise. They teach you about seasons, about trusting what you cannot yet see. I sipped my coffee and watched my son learning to prune his first vine. Maybe this season will be different. Maybe we'd both grow something worth keeping. If this story spoke to you, consider subscribing to A Father's Wrath and turning on the notification bell. Every week we share powerful stories about family, second chances, hard lessons, and the strength it takes to rebuild what matters most. Leave a comment below. Have you ever had to start over with someone you love? Your story might encourage someone else who's waiting for their own new season. Thank you for reading. Be patient, keep planting, and never stop believing in growth.